This is Kathy from Gadgets Top 321, and in today's video I'm going to be taking a look at Rohrer and Klingner Alt Goldgrun. I'm going to test it in a variety of pins and nib sizes ranging from a Pilot Extra Fine to a 1.5 stub nib, and I'm going to begin with a Pilot 78G with the extra fine steel nib. Alright, this is what I was anticipating. I've done some other writing samples. This is one of those inks that feels dry. And in this fine nib, it's putting down, just a very fine line. Yeah, this feels scratchy. Yeah, that's not good at all. Next, I've got my Pilot Custom 74 with a fine nib. This pen tends to do wonders with these kind of dry feeling inks. It feels better. It still feels dry. It's quite a bit, it's not dry, it's putting down a decent amount of ink. Let me scoot this over. I'm gonna say feels dry. It's just on the borderline of being tolerable. All right, it's starting to look a little better too, though. A little more legible. Next, I've got my Pilot Stargazer with a medium 14 karat nib. The Custom 74 also had a gold nib. Okay. Feels much better. Putting down a lot more ink, or at least it feels like it. Still feels a little dry, but it's not unpleasant. I could definitely deal with this. I'm gonna say this is nice. And it's definitely, like I said, it feels dry, but it's putting down a lot of ink. Next, I've got the Kaweco Perkeo all black with a medium nib. And with this nib that's coated in black, sometimes you get a little extra feedback. It just feels like the normal amount of feedback. It doesn't feel particularly drier than normal, so nice. Excuse me. Next, I've got my Pilot Metropolitan with a cursive medium nib. And sometimes this nib can feel a little dry. But on this Tomoe River paper, it feels smooth with this ink. I'm gonna say nice, because you could feel that it was a little bit drier than normal. And finally, I've got my Jinhao X750 with a 1.5 stub nib. It was a little bit of a hard start there. Now, when I first started writing with this ink, I thought, ooh, this ink may give Diatramentis Jane Austen a run for its money. I loved that ink just recently when I wrote with it, and I'm considering getting a bottle of it. But then I wrote with this one, and this ink has some character. On rhodia paper, it, like in these finer nibs, again, it feels dry. It's a watery type of ink, not much viscosity to it. But when you get into the medium nibs, it felt good. It felt a little dry in the Percao, but not bad. Let's see if you can see that, just the subtle shading. It's not abrupt. I'm not sure what word I'm looking for, but it's not an abrupt shading. In the Metropolitan, it looked nice, and you see the, now in the Percao, it's a little bit more uniform, and in the Pilot Stargazer, it's kind of uniform in look. It's the darker shade. In the Percao, it's the lighter shade. But in my Custom 74, you see a little bit of the shading. All right, and as I was writing, I was, thinking, oh, do I want a bottle of this, or would I prefer the Diatramentis Jane Austen? And it kind of hit me when I was doing this writing sample, having this much of this green all together in one place. When I was growing up, the house I grew up in, one of the bathrooms had all the fixtures were this color green. The sink, the toilet, the shower. And I'm like, a lot of enjoyment that I get from my inks is like an emotional connection you can make to something. And like with the Diatramentis Jane Austen, it reminded me of books I've read from that era. And but now Alt Goldgrun, the emotional trigger is a bathroom from the 70s. So, I don't know. It made me like it a little bit less. So, I thought that was interesting. And in the Leuchtturm, it just looks so good on the Leuchtturm paper. That shading, it is so pretty, and that looks so good. And when I come back over here to the Diatramentis Jane Austen, I like it, but it's not as spectacular as the Alt Goldgrun. And back to the Tomoe River paper. There's no sheen. There's, beautiful, subtle shading. This is an ink that I like best in medium nibs and larger. So, dilemma. All right, if you found this video helpful, please give me a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, please subscribe to my channel.